by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to build a 24/7 WhatsApp AI chatbot for restaurants that takes orders, gives people recommendations, collects feedback from people, and does basically everything that a restaurant would hire someone else to do for them. All right, so let's get straight into the demo. I've just gone ahead and said hello to the AI chatbot on WhatsApp, and it's essentially sent me the menu and asked me if I want to make an order. So I'll start by walking you through the process from the customer's point of view, and then I'll walk you through the Airtable database over here. First, on this customer side, so they sent the menu. What would I like? Would I like to make an order today? So first, I'll start by opening the menu and taking a look at it. So let's go with sweet potato fries. And I don't know, let's go with a strawberry milkshake. I see that in the menu as well. So close this and say, can I please get sweet potato fries with a strawberry milkshake? And by the way, I'm using Whisperflow. That's what allows me to essentially press a button on my laptop and then just speak, and it types that out for me. I use that quite a lot on my laptop. But you can see your order so far: chicken nuggets, 6 pieces, iced tea, sweet potato, strawberry milkshake. So what it's detecting actually here, which is something I forgot to talk about, is I've been testing this out before I made this recording, and I actually made an order, but I didn't finish the order. And on that order, I had chicken nuggets and iced tea. So it's detecting that I made that order before, and so it's just adding these items to my order, but I'll actually just tell it to remove those items from my order since I want to restart. So I'll just say remove the iced tea and the nuggets. No, I don't want to add anything else. Please submit it now. My name is Enoch Omunu, and my phone number is 941-555-777. Perfect. So it's gone through. We'll reach out to you shortly, and you can see just on screen right now on the left hand side, a new order has just popped into the restaurant's database system. And if we click on this, it has an order ID over here. It has an order date, order time. It has also the customer, like Enoch Omunu, and it has the total order amount, the order details, and a few other stuff down here, the conversation ID, and order status and order type, which is delivery. So you'll notice that not only do orders pop in immediately into the restaurant database, but the restaurant has more access to more things than just orders. So for example, if I come into conversations, I can see that there's a conversation down here, which correlates to the conversation ID of this. And if we look at this record, you can see that the customer, it also connects the conversations to customers and is able to connect orders to conversations as well. So the restaurant can essentially see which orders happened in which conversations. And then even we can go to customers as well, and we can see it should have created a new customer, Enoch Omunu. In fact, I was already a previous customer. So instead of creating a new customer, it just added my order to this over here. Now, the really cool thing about this as well is this part is not 100% finished, but I just want to show you what it would look like. The restaurant can also come into interfaces, and over here they would have like a dashboard of everything that's happening inside their AI chatbot and their digital system for making orders essentially. And now the really cool part that I want you to look at is as we move these orders from next stage to next stage, the user also gets updates. So I'll move his card from here to under preparation. So you can see it's just popped in. Quick update: our talented chefs are now preparing your order with care, ensuring it will be ready for you shortly. And then they move me from under preparation to out for delivery because my order is now out, has been now sent out for delivery. There you go. So you can see, letting you know our 5-star delivery team has left with your order and it's now on its way to you. This way customers get updates about their order, and it kind of helps make the customer experience a little bit better because the customer kind of knows where their order is at every stage. And now we can also move it to delivered and completed. So after the order has actually gotten to my place, my order has arrived and has been delivered. So you can see your order with order ID YK165997 has been completed. And then it would go on to ask me for feedback automatically that it would collect and then store in the restaurant's system. So I've just gone ahead and essentially answered a few questions. And now if we come into reviews and feedback in the restaurant database, automatically you'll see a new record being created. It will automatically refer which customer gave this review. So the restaurant can click in here and they can click the exact customer and see the exact customer's name, the order they made, the conversations they've had, and now the review they're actually giving. And then they can also view the order that led to this review. They can view the actual review text, which is, the review that I wrote over here. And then they can also view the rating that I gave, which is a 9 out of 10. You can see that over here. And then there's also an AI field that automatically detects the semantics of my review to essentially tell the business that A, this person's review was either positive, or B, their review was negative, or their review was neutral. In this database as well, there's this items table, and this essentially contains all the items on the restaurant's menu as well as their prices. So what the bot actually does is it reads from this restaurant's catalog of items to essentially find which items are readily available and their prices and all the details related to them at the beginning of every conversation. That way, any user on WhatsApp always gets the most up-to-date details about any item that is on offer at the restaurant. So before I build any kind of AI chatbot or agent, I always start by building a structure like this on a visual platform like Freeform. Now, if you want to generate a structure like this, go ahead and use the link in my video description. You can generate a free plan for your AI chatbot just by answering a few questions, so that should help you out a bit. Now, since the first item on our list is actually setting up the BotPress chatbot and integrating that to Airtable, we need to actually start by creating a BotPress account. So head over to botpress.com and essentially log in if you already have an account. If you don't, go ahead and try for free. An amazing software for building AI chatbots. And then head over into the actual dashboard after you've created your account. And you can see I have quite a few projects here, but I'll go ahead and create a new bot and select build with BotPress Studio. Now it should land you on a page like this. And before we do anything, we'll just start by deleting this little video up here just to kind of make space. And I'll also delete this autonomous node over here to kind of free up space. And I'll close these panels on the side. To start off by setting up our AI chatbot settings, I want you to come into the settings icon over here, bot settings. And you want to first of all give your chatbot a name. I'll leave all these settings as they are, but I'll come down here to the LLM options. This is basically when you get to choose the models that power your AI chatbot, and I'll change all of these to GPT 5.6. Where is it? Yep, 5.6 Luna. There we go. And the fallback LLM is the only one that I'll leave different. This LLM is essentially what your AI chatbot will fall back to in the case that it tries GPT 5.6 and it fails. Now for this next step, you need to turn on the following agents. I know we said we do it as step number 10 in the list plan, but I'm doing it right now to allow us to essentially test using these agents as we build along. But coming back into BotPress, the AI agents will be looking to turn on our number one, the knowledge agent, and the summary agent. And once that is done, I will now head over into the integration hub and we shall connect the AI chatbot to Airtable. So go ahead and just search for Airtable up here. It should show up, so Airtable, and you can go ahead and install that integration to your workspace, to your studio. Once it's installed, I'll close that and I'll go back into the integration hub and I'll also install WhatsApp because we shall connect that shortly. So go ahead with WhatsApp, select that and select install integration. I just realized that I made a mistake here, so I'll change that from Vine Lead to Vine Leaf. AI chatbot, perfect. And now coming into the integrations, to see your integrations come into this pile of boxes on the left panel, I'll click that over here. You should see it somewhere here on the left, and essentially let me just pop that out so that you can kind of see that. So you should be able to see that down here. So go ahead and click on installed integrations and you should see Airtable, WhatsApp, and a few other integrations that BotPress installs by default. So we won't mess around with these, but go ahead and click into WhatsApp first. And connecting to WhatsApp is actually a very simple process on BotPress, which is why I absolutely love it. Go ahead and select connect with OAuth, and if you're signed into your Meta Business Suite account in your current browser that you're using, this process will be extremely quick and easy. So it should detect which business suite account you're signed into, and you can just go ahead and continue with that account and then select get started. Now over here, you want to select the correct business portfolio. Once you've selected a business portfolio, this should be pre-filled for you, so you can select next. So I'd recommend that you start with a new WhatsApp phone number, click into that over here, and once you've done that, it should allow you to select a WhatsApp business account. If you already have a WhatsApp business account, go ahead and select that. If you don't, just create a WhatsApp business account. So I already have one, I'm just gonna select that. And I also already have a business profile with a connected phone number, so I'm also gonna select that. Now after proceeding, if you don't have a WhatsApp business account, it will prompt you to add a phone number to essentially connect that account to and give it a name. So you will start by giving it a name, then add a phone number, like a phone number that is connected to nothing. So like a fresh phone number essentially that you have access to. Add that phone number in, paste in the code that it will send, the verification code it will send to that phone number, paste it back into this portal, and then select next, and after a few steps you should land on a page that looks like this. So there's literally nothing else. It's that simple. Just click through all of this, finish, and then also click through this over here to select OK, and it should take you to a page that says authentication successful, letting you know that BotPress has successfully created the connection to WhatsApp. And in a few seconds we should see connected over here. Now if we head over into WhatsApp, we can actually test it to see if it works. Once you've done that, we now want to connect to Airtable. Now start by heading into the video description below, put in your email to get the resource pack, and once you get it, you should be able to come in here and just paste in the link to the Airtable database that you should copy, that you should clone. Once you've pasted that in, it should take you to something that looks like this, and you'll see you won't be able to edit any of these because this database is all mine essentially. But you can copy the base just by pressing that icon up here, and if you don't have account, it will prompt. If you don't have an Airtable account, it will prompt you to log in first. But if you do, it should automatically create it, and then it's just asking for a workspace that I should create this in. So I'll just go ahead and put this in AICB. And I'll add that base over there, and just like that, it will now clone the entire database so that it's now yours, including all of the previous data that I'd put into it while testing. The next thing I'll walk you through is just views. So essentially, you saw how I had that views that categorized orders. When you first log in, you won't get that, but you can just come over here to the left panel by clicking on these three lines and then select Kanban, which will then split up your view to look like this. Basically visit all of these other tables and put them in different views. For example, this one has a calendar view for reservations. The items table, I believe, has a gallery view so that they can view the items in a gallery format, etc. So you can also customize views. And if you want to learn more about using Airtable, just go to YouTube and search up the Airtable tutorial, and it's a pretty simple and amazing software to use. I always refer to it as like Google Sheets on steroids, basically. Now, setting up the Airtable integration, you want to come into it by first of all clicking on the pile of boxes and then Airtable. And then over here, you want to select Connect with Auth. Once you've done that, you want to head over into Use a Personal Access Token. And so you'll need a base ID, an endpoint URL, and a personal access token. So for your endpoint URL, go ahead and put in this link, https and then /api.airtable.com. /v0/ which, by the way, you can find in the resource pack. All of this you can find except for the personal stuff like the base ID and the personal access token. For your base ID, to find it, go into Airtable and then click into the URL and select essentially this text over here from app, beginning from app, after that slash, after the .com, so from app all the way to the last character before the next slash. And now for the personal access token, head into Airtable, the database you just copied and created, and then select your account in the bottom left and go into the Builder Hub. Once you're inside the Builder Hub, you will automatically land in personal access tokens. You want to create a new token, give it a name. I'll call this RB AI chatbot, and I'll just go ahead and add all resources for access, and for the scopes I'll just go ahead and add all scopes as well. So let me just click through all of these. It should take a little while, but I believe there should be like 3 more left. 2, 3, 4. There we go. So that's the last one. And then go ahead and create the token, and it should generate the token for you, which should pop up on screen. Go ahead and copy it. Make sure you keep this safe and don't show it to anyone, because anyone who has access to this token can access data within your AI chatbot. Now you want to be quick with this process of putting in these details over here, because otherwise this window will close on you because there's a timeout on it. And that actually happened to me while I was trying to show you this demonstration. But essentially what you can do is, if it closes, just make sure you've pasted the personal access token and the base ID somewhere on your laptop that's quick and safe and easy to access. And then you can just come in here, reopen it by going back into BotPress and then just pasting all this information quick as soon as it opens, and then selecting submit. Now at the time of recording this, I'm not sure what kind of error is on BotPress, but essentially it isn't reflecting that it's connected to Airtable over here. I don't know if it does the same thing for you. Just know that it is actually connected, but for me it just doesn't show. Even if I've gone through all the right steps, it still shows that I'm not connected to Airtable. So if you want to test whether you're connected, just come into this main workflow, create a standard node by right clicking and selecting standard node, add a card, add the list records card for Airtable, select a table that you wanted to list records from. So I selected the orders table, and then just store that in an output variable, which you can select that, create a variable, and then just create it. And then using a text card, you can essentially output the contents of those variables to see whether it was able to find the information in the Airtable and put that in a variable. And I can see that it has done just that. I can see a bunch of data here, which proves to me essentially that it's reading from my Airtable database and that it is connected, even if it doesn't reflect in the settings. So that's fine. We can move to the next step. So just like that, we've done part one. We've connected, we've created the WordPress chatbot and Airtable base, adjusted settings, and integrated WordPress to Airtable and WhatsApp. So let's move to step two. I'll just mark that as done. If you cloned my database, everything in here should be perfect. So all you have to do is basically just adjust it to make it a bit more perfect, I guess, for your use case. So if you're building it for a specific restaurant, you want to maybe adjust these items on the menu to make sure that they reflect what that restaurant actually offers. But I would recommend that you don't change any of the details I've already put in, like not the actual customer details, but I mean like things like order ID, fields like order date, customer date, because these are linked directly into what else I'll show you in this video, and the pieces of code that will come with putting data into those fields. So if you tamper with those, then essentially your AI chatbot won't be able to properly put in data into those. So I'd recommend that you just add stuff, but avoid removing stuff from what I've created so far. But I have nothing else to add, so I'll just come back into the list and take this as done, as having finished setting up the full restaurant bot database inside Airtable. And now the next step we need to do is collect knowledge, upload that to the Airtable database, and upload that to WordPress. Now, first of all, coming into WordPress, the knowledge that I want to upload is just information about that restaurant. So I'd come into knowledge bases. I'm going to create a new knowledge base. I can see there's already one, and I'm going to upload a document. Now on my laptop, I have a document called vineleafknowledgebase.txt. It's a TXT file, which is what I recommend you upload your documents as. And essentially it just stores knowledge about the restaurant, such as where it's located, the contact phone number, some of its policies, opening times, etc. And I'd recommend that you have that. This, by the way, is generated by AI just as a fictitious restaurant for the purposes of this tutorial. But once you've uploaded the knowledge, you can just confirm, and you should see it go into your AI chatbot there. So that's how you know it's done. And after a few seconds, it should tick. There we go. And you don't have to worry about uploading the items on the menu or any of that, because remember, we're building a system that will automatically check Airtable and essentially check in here for the items that the restaurant is currently offering and that are available, and it will automatically, the AI chatbot will automatically download all of those items from Airtable at the beginning of every conversation before it starts to offer them to users. So don't worry about that. The last thing you might want is to just have a digital menu as a PDF that the AI chatbot can send to people so that they can essentially use that to make orders. You can have images in it, etc., but I've just generated a simple one, once again using AI. And over here you can see just a few items on the menu, and yeah, it's basically a PDF with the restaurant name, all of that, and then just items on the menu. So go ahead and get this from the restaurant you're building it for, just a digital menu in PDF form. If you got the resource pack, you can also find this exact menu that I used for this build inside there. So go ahead and steal that and use it in your own AI chatbot. You can also find the knowledge base, the TXT document that I just uploaded to. I'm not going to do anything with the menu for now. We'll come to that in just a bit. But just like that, you finished uploading knowledge to your AI chatbot. And so coming into the list, I'll go ahead and mark this third step as done. There we go. All right, I just got a funny mistake here in my list. I have 3 twice, so 1, 2, 3, 3, but it's fine, whatever, let's just go on. So let's move on to building part 1. And if you come back up here into the plan, you can see that part 1 is this very first section where the user starts a conversation, and it creates a new conversation record in Airtable, and then they get a general reply, an introduction, and then they also have the ability to ask questions about offers, the menu, the restaurant, etc. So this is essentially the general section of the AI chatbot. Now you want to come back into WordPress. I'll go ahead and delete this node I had created before, and I'll close this as well just to make more space for what we're going to build here. So there we go. I'll just zoom out a little. So right click anywhere on the canvas, this blank space, and create a new node, standard node, and I'll call this node intro and get items. Now we essentially just want to send the user a text message to introduce the AI chatbot to them. So I'll just go ahead and say, hi, I'm Marta. Let's just give your AI chatbot a name to make it seem more human, and I'll be your AI waitress today. There we go. And then from there, we'll just go ahead and also send the user the menu at the beginning of every conversation, just so that the user can reference that in the chat and use that to place orders. So add card and add a file, send a file to the user. And then the file that you want to send is you want to upload the menu that you just generated, the PDF. So I've uploaded the file, my PDF menu, and then I'll just say something like, here's your menu to the user. And now from here, the next thing that we want to do is actually first retrieve all the most up-to-date information about the items that are currently available at the restaurant. So we'll start by adding a card, and you want to add the list records Airtable card. This will list records in a certain table, and the table we're going for is items, because if we come back into Airtable, you can see the items table is what stores essentially all this stuff about the different stuff on offer at the restaurant. So I'll come back into WordPress over here. Let me just close this. And then, so we'll list the items in the items table, and then we want to store that in a variable. I'll just go ahead and create a new variable, and I'll call this workflow.items. So I'll just type in items and create items. So item, whatever items, same thing. And then once we have that over here, essentially we'll now add a node over here, a standard node, and we'll connect this up here. So far the AI chatbot will have introduced itself to the user and listed the items that are so far in the restaurant's database. And now we want to actually store those items inside a conversation variable. Now there's different variables in WordPress, but the reason we want to use a conversation variable is that we want those items to remain attached to this specific conversation. So I'll just come in here and we'll start by creating, first of all, the conversation variable that will store the items. So create a new variable down here, and then the scope, change that to conversations, and then change the type over here to object, and we'll just call this items. And I'll go ahead and put that in. Then just come into the execute code card over here, click into the code and just type in conversation dot items, so reference that variable, and assign to that variable workflow dot item. So we're essentially assigning the data that's in the workflow dot item variable into conversation dot items. There we go. And you should not see any red lines if you've done it correctly. And then the next thing that you want to paste in this execute code card that we're in is you want to create an array and essentially assign these details to it. Basically, we're building an array is like a box that you can pack data into, and we're trying to pack data into this array so that we can send it to Airtable to create the new customer record. So essentially, I mean the new conversation record. So once you've done that, just type in this exact code. By the way, you can find all the codes that I'm going to use in this build in the resource pack below, so that should make it easier for you. Once you've pasted that in, you can click out here, but you'll notice there's a red line on workflow.airtable outgoing, and it's because we haven't created that variable yet, so it can't store the box in a variable that doesn't exist. So let's go ahead and create that first. So new variable, I'll call this Airtable outgoing, just like that, and I will change it from string to array and an array of options, and then I'll press enter. So just like that, if we click back in here, you should see the red line is gone, and you don't have to worry about these red lines over here. So yeah, we should be good. Now we want to actually send that data into Airtable, so add a card and add the create record card from Airtable. And inside here, the table that we're adding the data into is conversations, since we're creating a new conversation. And the field that we are adding, the fields essentially is the data that you're sending and into the which fields you're sending it into. Since we've already built the packet, the box that we're sending, we can just attach that package here by using double curly brackets like that and typing in workflow dot Airtable outgoing. So once you reference that, you should see that it goes through. You might get a little error message on the bottom, but don't worry about that. As long as you've typed it exactly as it appears down here, Airtable outgoing, that should be good. And then the last thing you want to do is essentially, we don't want to only send the data, but when you send data into Airtable, it sends you a message back to let you know it has received your data and has created the record. And in that message it sends back is the record ID. We want to store this record ID inside WordPress so that we can reference it later when we are updating the conversation. So select here to store the output value and filter or create. Just create a new one. I'll call this result, workflow.result. There we go. And then inside here we shall add another execute code card. And in this execute code card, we just want to store the user's conversation ID record, the conversation record ID from Airtable inside a variable here in WordPress. So I'll first of all go ahead and create that variable. So I'll just call that AT-convo ID, so AT-convo ID, and I'll change that to a user variable so that it's attached to that user, and then I will change I'll leave the type as string, so that should be fine. User AT-convo ID, and then inside here we shall just type in AT-convo ID is equal to, and we shall assign essentially the output. We shall assign the ID field of the output from the result variable that this record card over here, the create record card, just returned to us. So inside here we shall put in workflow.results.id. There we go. And essentially it should sorry, I have to put user.at. Yeah, user.at-convo ID is equal to workflow.result.id. We just need to attach that, and once that's done, that should be fine. And it will now assign the created record to there's created record ID over here to the user's variable. Next, we shall create the general workflow, which is where the majority of the AI chatbot's routing will happen. This is where the user will flow before the AI chatbot decides where to send them based on what they want to do. So I'll start by coming into this tab on the left, and I'll select create workflow. I'll rename this to general. And once I've done that, I'll come back into main, and I'll send the user into that workflow by adding a card, and I'll add the general card. So there we go, that should be done. And once that is done, when they come out of there, I'll just link this up to the end, and that should finish up the main part of this build, the part in the main workflow. Now let's move into the general workflow. All right, so in the general field, in the general workflow, create an autonomous node over here by right clicking and selecting autonomous node. And then you want to, first of all, add a variable. We essentially want to give it access to the conversation.items variable, which is down here, to essentially allow it to see the items that the restaurant currently has on offer, which will allow it to answer questions that the user might have about items in the menu. You shouldn't take write access, because that will give it the ability to edit the variable, so just leave it as is. But then you also want to add knowledge, and you want to give it access to all KBs. This will enable your AI chatbot at this point to answer questions that the user might ask it using information that's also inside your knowledge base that we just uploaded. From then, you also want to add transitions. Now, transitions are essentially features that allow the user to leave this autonomous node. You'll notice that standard nodes over here have exit points, but autonomous nodes don't, and it's because the AI essentially takes full control of a conversation, so the user never has to exit. But you can add custom exit points to force the user out of this section upon certain circumstances, which we shall add. So the first transition that I'll add down here is ordering, and the second transition that I'll add over here is check/cancel, just like that. There we go. So we should have two. No, this is start order. It should be ordering. There we go. And now you just need to give the AI, the autonomous node, instructions for what to do while it's interacting with the user when they're at this stage. So go ahead and just paste in the instructions from the resource pack. I've put mine in right here. And you can see when you paste it in at first, these fields over here will be essentially blank. In the pack, they might have a couple of dashes, or they'll come with like brackets like this that say all KBs or something like that. So you want to delete that, and instead you want to replace that with this card over here. So you can add cards essentially that you can reference in your instructions so that the AI knows exactly what you're talking about. So I've added that one over here, and down here I'll also add that one was for use the data in the variable. So we wanted to reference the data in the items variable. So down here I'll just go ahead and click items. So just make sure you fill it in the right way. It's kind of like playing fill in the blanks, just so that the AI knows exactly what you're referring to. So use the data in the items conversation variable to retrieve the relevant information before responding, etc. So once you've filled in all the blanks that you need to, you should be good. And you can also edit the prompt a little bit to make it match the restaurant you're building for. And once you've done that, we can then close this, and we are done with that part. Now we just need to send the user out to a different place if they're ordering, and if they're canceling their order or checking, we send them out to a different place as well. So if they're ordering, we want to create a new workflow and name it build order. We'll send them there. But if they are checking or canceling an order, I'll come over here and I'll just rename this, and I'll say check/cancel order. There we go. Now we have these two workflows, but you'll notice the branches are gray, which means they are dormant, like we can't the user has no way to get there. So in the general field, let's connect these up to the right places. So I'll right click, create a standard node and connect that to ordering. And if the user is ordering, let's send them into the build order workflow. And then I'll just create a standard node down here. And if the user wants to check or cancel their order, let's send them down into the check/cancel order. And then when it flows out of both of these, we can just flow straight into the end. So that should be good for the general workflow. And just like that, we're done with part one, because now by building what we've built, the user will be able to ask questions, and it will also handle the general reply and all this other stuff here. So I'll come down here and I'll just mark that part one as done. And then we'll just move on to building part two, which is now this section. And I would say it's actually the heaviest part of this build, essentially getting the AI chatbot to start an order, ask for items they'd like, and basically do all this good stuff over here to send an order into our database. I want you to come back into the studio and head into the build order workflow. And once you're inside there, you want to delete that node first. And we're going to start by creating an action. Now, an action in WordPress is essentially a custom built card that you can pass on to an autonomous node. And so to set up that action, you want to start by heading into this gear. Is it a gear? It's just a hexagon, I believe, on the left panel. Once you're inside here, you want to select create action, and we want to start by renaming this action to let's say send order. So send order. There we go. You don't have to build a description for it. Now just copy the code from the resource pack and put it inside here. It should look something like this. It's a little long, and to explain to you what it does, essentially this first portion of the code generates a unique order ID for the user. Basically a code, I believe 6 or 8 digit code. And then from there, this second part sends out the order. And then there's a third part at the very bottom section, which basically updates the customer's record ID in Airtable to basically create a new customer and attach that new customer to the order that it's sending. So once you've done that, there's a couple things that you have to change. The first thing you have to change is just your base ID over here. So you need to replace this with the base ID, the same one that we've just collected in the previous step when integrating Airtable. But before you leave, there's a few other things that you have to do. First of all, you have to come into the input schema. Now, schema is basically a rule of how the structure of data is supposed to look while it's flowing into the action and while it's being output from the action. So for the input of data into the schema, you want to change it to the following. Just go ahead and delete everything over here, and instead you want to paste in the schema from the resource pack once again, and it should look something like this. And once that's done, you've essentially fixed your schema. And this schema is actually what will define the fields that the AI needs to fill in while it's giving data to the autonomous node. And then from there, coming back into the code, that should be fine. And then you don't have to worry about the output schema. You can just leave it as is, because we're not really expecting an output. But once you've done that, I can see my name did not stick. So let me just go ahead and put that in again. Send order and select enter. There we go. And I'll close that. And you can see that action has been created. But there's still a couple steps that you need to go before this action is able to work. The first step you need to do is actually create a table, because in this top part of the code, after it has generated the order ID, it puts it in a table in WordPress. And every time it's going to generate a new order ID for a new customer, it first checks that table to make sure that that order ID doesn't exist, just so that it doesn't generate duplicates. So start by heading into tables in this left panel, and you want to create a new table, and I'll just call this orders table. Once you've created the table, it should look something like this. The only thing that you have to add over here is order ID. Make sure that you do it with the caps at the beginning and then the 2 ID caps. Everything has to be exactly as is here, otherwise it won't work. And then you just want to remove this thing that says nullable so that it always has to be filled. Otherwise it won't go through. You can leave it as a string and then just save that. And then once again, there's still one more thing you have to do, and that is actually giving that action access to your Airtable personal access token so that it can perform changes into your Airtable database. Now, we have integrated Airtable to WordPress, But in this action that we've built, we are not using that integration. We are kind of actually bypassing it and going directly to Airtable through this action, through this piece of code. And so what that means is we need to give it access to the personal access token, but I would highly recommend that you avoid putting your personal access token over here. Instead, we want to put it in an environment variable, which is safer, and then reference that variable here. So you can see I've already referenced the variable here. I've called it Airtable path. So you just need to create your Airtable path environment variable. To do that, head over into settings, scroll all the way down, and down here where it says configuration variables, select add, change this to Airtable path. Like you can see, mine is automatically popping up because I've done this before. Airtable path, I'll just go ahead and do that. I have to enter a password because I had already typed in my Airtable path. But yeah, once you've created yours, once you type Airtable path over here, go ahead and paste your personal access token here, and you can see it's hidden because obviously it's something that's supposed to be kept secret. And once you've done that, you're essentially done. And when you click out of that and you go back into the action, you should see that Airtable path no longer has a red line under it, meaning it actually works. And now you also need to create these variables over here, user.order.id and user.airtable.order.id and user.fullname and user.phone and user.airtable customer ID. So just go ahead and create all of those one by one. To create, for example, user.airtable ID, add a new variable, change it to user, and then change it to order ID. There we go. And I'll go ahead and create that. So that's one variable down. Yep, user.order ID has been created. So I'll also scroll down and create Airtable order ID as well. So new variable, paste that in, change user string Airtable order ID, done. Next I'll do the others. So user.fullname, user.phone, and Airtable customer ID. And now if you come back into the send order action that we've just created, you should not see any red lines apart from under fetch. That should be the only place where there's red lines, those squiggly lines, and that is essentially fine. And this stuff up here, which doesn't really matter, you don't have to touch that. And yeah, once you've done that, you can essentially close this and come back into workflows and the build order workflow. And then in this autonomous node we created, of course, you want to link it up to the entry and then click into it. And the tool we want to give it access to is the one we've just created called send order. So we've given it access to the tool. We also do want to give it access to knowledge. So I'll just put in all KBs. We also do want to give it access to the variable of the items. So add variable, and we'll add conversation items. And we want to create another variable called order object, which will store basically an object of the user's order. So new variable, I'll call this order object, just like that. And I'll change this to a user variable, change that to an object. And we'll add that here. And we'll also give it write access. Next, we shall add two transitions from this exit point, from this autonomous node. So first of all, I'll add submitted over here, and then I will also add abandoned. So these are the two ways that the user can flow out of this autonomous node, either by submitting their order or by abandoning it. And then the last thing that we have to do is paste in the instructions. Once again, get the instructions from the pack, and then just replace all of these fields, the square brackets, there'll be square brackets for you, using the appropriate cards from this left hand side. So for example, for this one over here, that is the items variable. Down here is the order object variable. Over here is the main KB tool, which is, there we go, all KBs. Down here is the send order action. So let me go ahead and add that in. Over here is submitted. So let me add that submitted transition, and then down here is the abandoned transition. There we go. And just like that, it should be working fine now. So let's go ahead and actually test it out. All right, so I've just run an order and I can see this just popped up over here. So that's fine. Now we know that this section works. So now we can just connect it to the next two outputs. And actually, whether the order is submitted or abandoned, we still just want to send them out and back into general conversation. So I'll come with a standard node over here, and I'll add a card. I'll add a wait for user input card to wait for the user to make their next input before it transitions. And then after the user has made their next input, it should move them into general, where their input will then be reanalyzed by the AI depending on what it is, to essentially help them out again. And just like that, we finished the build order section of this build. So yeah, coming back into this plan, I can see part 2 is done. Oh yeah, by the way, you might have noticed it says send submits to Airtable and to voice agent. I won't actually be doing the voice agent in this build because I realized it would make this video probably like an hour longer. So yeah, we'll save that for another build. But essentially now we can move on to part 3, which is giving the user the ability to check/cancel their order. But yeah, to do that part, let's come into the check/cancel order workflow. It's actually very, very similar to the build order. So we'll delete the standard node, add an autonomous node, and then we need to add 2 actions that we shall use to check the user's order. So come back into the hexagon thing again, and we'll add a new action. And inside you want to paste in this code for checking the user's order using their ID. Once you've pasted in the code, essentially you want to edit the base ID to make sure that it matches your base ID as well. But you don't have to change anything else because the Airtable personal access token is already referred to. Alright, so go ahead and paste in the code for this specific action, and we shall call this action get check order by ID, because essentially it will check the user's order using their ID first, and if it finds that they don't have an order ID, or they haven't made, which means they probably haven't made a previous order from this WhatsApp chat, then it will ask them for their names so that it can check the order by their names instead, which is a different action that we're also going to set up shortly. But now that we've input the code and we've done the name, we need to do the schema. For the input schema, you can actually delete all of this and just leave z.object empty like that, but it has to exist. So just leave it as z.object, but it should be empty. For the output schema, we'll do the same. So I'll just copy this, I'll come in here, and I'll delete all of that and just leave that also as z.object as empty. Alright, so once you've done that, everything should be okay, and we can then leave that tool, and let's go ahead and create check order by name. So I'll add the new action and go ahead and paste in the code once again, and there you go. I've put my code in, but you'll see a bunch of red lines under input.name, and that input.name is actually an input variable that comes from the schema. And the reason there's red lines under here is because we haven't properly defined the schema. So head into the input schema over here, delete everything and replace it with the code from the document. And it should essentially do just z.object, and then it should create a field called name. And that should be the only field being input. For the output schema, we want to delete everything here, and we want to output a couple of things. So success, message, and record. So once again, just paste in the code. Everything in this build should basically just be copy paste, so even if you've never coded before, it's super easy to go through. And once again, just give it a name. So I'll change this to check order by name, and once that is through, you can then close this, and you should see it should be created over there. Now in this autonomous node that we created in the check/cancel order workflow, first of all, we want to hook it up to the entry, and then we want to add a couple of variables. The first variable that we are going to add is the order object, and we're going to give write access. Next, we're going to add the Airtable order ID, and we're also going to put write access on that. And then lastly, we're going to put user.fullname, the full name down here, but we're not going to put write access on that one. And then the next thing that we want to do from this stage is essentially add a couple of tools. The first tool we're going to add is check order by ID, which we should have created. Next, we're going to add check order by name. And then lastly, the next tool we're going to add is actually knowledge. So add knowledge and just give it access to all KBs. And then we want to add 2 transitions out of here. So the first one is going to be completed. And then I'll also add failed down here. Great. So we should have 2 exit points. And then lastly, just paste in the instructions from the resource pack again. Once again, go ahead and replace all the fields over here with the right cards from the left panel. Great. And once you've done that, you can then connect these over here to a new standard node, which is very similar once again to build order, where we'll just have a wait for user input card, and then here we shall send them to general, back to general, and then from there we shall exit. So that should come there. and I'll just organize this a little bit, and yeah, there we go. So we are actually done with the check/cancel order part of the build. And so if we come back into the tick-offs, we're actually done with building part 2, and we're done with building part 3. So now we just have part 4 and 5 left. Right, and now we come into the portion of the video where we work on the triggers that will update the user depending on where their order is in. Now, I'll be honest with you, if you don't want to upgrade to an Airtable Pro account, which I believe is around $24 a month, you can go ahead and skip this next part of the build. But be aware that if you do skip that, you'll be unable to automatically collect feedback from people, because that requires a trigger from Airtable, and you'll be unable to automatically update people on their order, because that also requires a trigger. But just go into the video description and you'll find the timestamps, and you can skip ahead into the video if you're not upgrading. But I would highly recommend that you do upgrade to Airtable to give your AI chatbot all the functionality that you saw in the demo. So if you are sticking around for the upgrade, essentially when you're in Airtable and you have upgraded to a Pro account, you should be able to come into automations over here. Once you're inside automations, you should find it empty, unlike mine over here, because I've already built it. But essentially what you want to do is start by creating a new automation. You probably won't have this many, so just create your new automation. After you've created it, you'll have a trigger that you need to add. You want to select that and change it to when a record is updated. Once you've changed it to that, it should bring up a panel like this on your right hand side that you can also edit. And you want to change this to, let me just zoom in a little more, to first of all, you want to select the table, the orders table over here. Once you've selected the orders table, you want to change it when the order status changes. So for example, select watch field down here where it says watching one field. And essentially when an update changes to the order status, that's when it will trigger this. So change it to order, select order status by turning on this toggle. And then you can put the view on Kanban as well. And once you're done, that works. And then essentially what you can do is you can go into your data, change a record, like move it from I don't know, inbound to change an order from like inbound to maybe being processed, and then come in here and say test step and choose record, and you should be able to test it and see if the trigger will fire. Now, after you've done that, add an action, and the action that you want to add is run a script. Once you've added that action, it should open something that looks probably like this panel once again on the right hand side, or if it doesn't open the panel on the right hand side, it will already open the code to look like this. Inside here, you just want to paste in this exact code, which by the way, you can find inside the the resource pack once again. And then over here in the inputs, you want to create the following inputs. Number 1, conversation ID. Make sure you create them character for character as I have here. And the value, you just want to select add and add the record called conversation ID, which you can find by scrolling down here and just selecting conversation ID. Do the same for order ID, and then add the order ID record status, and then add the order status record, and those are the inputs. And then down here, you want to add a secret. Start by adding a new secret, and then change the name of the secret to BotPress webhook URL. And inside there, you want to put in the URL of your BotPress webhook. To find it, come into BotPress Studio over here, head into Integration Hub, and you want to install the webhook integration. So search for webhook, and you should be able to install it over here. There you go. And after you've installed it to your AI chatbot, go ahead and just copy this link down here and put that link inside Airtable here as the value for this new secret that you're creating. But just make sure it's character for character, including the caps locks for the capital letters for the names that you're creating over here. And once you've done that and you've put in your webhook URL, you can then click out of this, and everything over here in the script should be fine. You don't have to change anything, but you can go ahead and test this once again by changing the status for one order inside your table and then coming in here to test it. After you've done that, essentially your Airtable will now send webhook triggers to that WordPress URL upon an order's status being changed inside the database. And then now we're going to work on the process in WordPress that will receive the events from that URL and then be able to translate those into updates that it should provide to the user. So first of all, come into create workflow, and you want to create a workflow called triggers. So I'll rename this to triggers. And inside here, we're actually not going to use the start node, but you can just keep it there if you'd like. Instead, we're going to use a trigger. So if you've installed the WordPress, the webhook integration, which we just have, right click and select trigger, and you'll see a bunch of triggers, but down here you want to select event webhook. So click on that over here, and over there now we'll actually test an event. So I want you to first of all head back into Airtable, and you want to turn this script that you've just created on using this toggle in the top left, and then just move into your data and change like one of these records from inbound to under preparation. And so after you've done that and you've moved one of these records here, essentially now Airtable will detect that and send a trigger to WordPress. If we come into our WordPress studio, you can actually see that by clicking on this trigger, selecting this little test button down here, and if you select show last received events, you should see the events as they come in, and you can see every time you create an event, it will also show up over here inside WordPress. And if we just click on this event and look at the payload and look at the body, you can see that an order ID with YK995873 was changed to the status of under preparation. So that's how you know that your trigger actually works. And now first of all, you want to just add a log card, and this log card will just log the status, the new status that has come in to the logs, the WordPress logs. And you can do that by putting in event.payload.body.status over here. Alright, cool. Once you've essentially created this log card and you've put in that, we'll actually go ahead and copy this variable because we shall use it right here. So add a card and add an AI transition. Now an AI transition essentially allows us to send the user down multiple paths and outputs depending on what the text we put in here is, and it categorizes the text into different categories. So the text I'll put in is, I'll paste in this variable event.payload.body.status. Then for the categories, add delivered / completed, add cancelled, and then add other down here. So it should give you 3 output buttons from here. I'll disconnect this from the exit, and we shall put a standard node there. Now up here is for if an order was delivered / completed. So let me just say delivered. I'll change the text, I'll add a text card, and in the text I'll put your order with order ID, and then paste in this variable event.payload.body.order ID has been completed. And then from here we shall actually send them into a new workflow that we shall create called feedback collector. So I'll come into workflows, I'll create a new workflow, and I'll call this feedback collector. And then coming back into the triggers, I will hook that up over here for someone who has had their order delivered. So feedback collector, there we go. Next we need to add the path for if their order is cancelled. I will add a standard node. I will add a text card. I'll actually add 2 text cards over here. And in the first text card we shall add your order with order ID event.payload.body.order ID was just cancelled. And in the second one I'll add if this was a mistake, please call us to fix it, just like that. And then I'll leave that as is for now. And then I'll add a third exit point down here, a third path, and this is for other and for this default output down here. So make sure you connect these last 2 dots to down here, and this is for any other status updates. So for these other status updates, we'll add an AI task card, and we'll give it instructions to essentially use the input, which will contain the status, the new status, to generate a custom message to the user, just updating them on their order. So in the input, first of all, you want to type in status and then add a colon, and then input event.payload.body.status. So the status will be this over here, and then you want it to store the result in a certain variable. So I'll just come over here and I'll just say text output. I'll create a new variable, workflow string. I'll add that here, and then the result over here, workflow.text output. That's where it will store its response. Then I'll add a text card down here, and in this text card I will basically output now the response from the AI, which will be stored in workflow.text output. And then the last thing we have to do in this triggers workflow is add a standard node, and I'll add a wait for user input card, and then I will send the user back into general after waiting for their input. So this is kind of like the default way to send people out of workflows. We send them back into the general workflow, as you've seen in other parts of the build. And then just hook up all these exit points from the different paths to this one node over here, and it should send them to the exit after that. And just like that, we've done basically part 4 and actually a bit of part 5, because we've done the trigger, but now we just need to do the feedback collector. So coming back into my tick-offs, I'll mark this as done. And you can see how easy it is to build an AI chatbot once you have a clear plan like this. So you can actually go ahead and generate your own AI chatbot plan like this using the link in my video description, where you can generate a free plan just by answering a few questions. It's a very short quiz, and it will ask you about your project, what you're looking to build, and then it will help you create this entire plan for your AI chatbot. Now heading into the feedback collector workflow, once again we are adding an autonomous node and we are building a custom action for it. So add the autonomous node, head over into actions, create a new action, and I'll start by pasting in the code for this feedback collector, the feedback sender. So I've gone ahead and pasted in the code over here. Once again, make sure you replace your base ID with the correct one. For the input schema, you want to put in the following: z.object, and then this code over here, which you can get from the resource pack once again. And then for the output schema, you can just leave it empty by deleting everything over there, so it's just empty, just like that. Then I'll change this over here to send feedback, the name, and just like that we should be done. I can then close this, and we've created the tool. So I'll come into add tool, and I'll add the send feedback tool. I'll also add knowledge to it, giving it access to all KBs. And I'll add a transition down here, which I will call completed. So completed, there we go. And then for the instructions, we just want to paste in the following prompt. There we go. And I'll replace once again these areas with the correct cards from here. And coming out of completed, we can then just connect this to exit. And just like that, we're done with building part 5. So I'll come down here and I'll add done. And then we need to set up Airtable logging at end of conversation, set up the Airtable dashboard, which you can do on your own, but I've already, by cloning my base, you'll have already found like a dashboard pre-set up. So I'll mark that as done. I will enable the relevant agents, which I'll get to that. We'll test on WhatsApp, which you'll also do on your own because I've already shown you the demo. And then I'll publish the latest version and download and backup. So I'll just come to these. We only have 3 more tasks left in this build essentially. So number 1, conversation logging at the end of the conversation. So start by heading into workflows, head into conversation end. This is where the user flows every time before the conversation ends. And start by creating a new workflow variable, and I'll call it workflow I'll just call it Airtable outgoing. Airtable outgoing. It should be workflow, and let's leave this as an array of options. Airtable outgoing workflow array of options. There we go. Then add an execute code card over here. Inside this execute code card, you want to paste in this code, which you can find once again in the packet. And then inside this code will essentially pack in the user's conversation ID and their transcript, and will essentially just log the conversation into Airtable, like the full conversation transcript. And then you want to add an update record card. So update record. There we go, update record, Airtable, and then fields. You want to change this field over here to workflow.airtable outgoing. For the record ID, you want to input user.atconvo ID over there. Remember how I said we needed to store that so we could reference it later. Now is the time. And then for the table ID or name, let's type in conversations, which is the name of our conversations table in Airtable. And just like that, we are finally done with building this AI chatbot on WordPress at least. So coming back into the plan, I'll just go ahead and tick this as done. Next, we just have to enable the relevant agents and then publish the latest version and download the backup. So coming to agents over here, you can enable these other agents if you need them, but for me, they're not relevant to this build, so I'm automatically done with that. But if you want your AI chatbot to be able to speak different languages, you can turn on the translator agent, policy for policies, personality for a specific personality that you want to give to it. And then publish over here, just select that, and then publish changes, which will publish your bot to WhatsApp and web chat, and that will essentially put the latest version that we've just finished building on WhatsApp and now make it readily accessible to people. Another last thing that you can do after this is finished publishing is just download a backup to your device so you can import it in case something goes wrong. So come over here to the WordPress logo in the top left, select import/export, and then just export, and it should download the file to your laptop. So that's the tutorial done. If you want to watch another tutorial so you can learn how to build more AI chatbot stuff, essentially for businesses, go ahead and watch this one up here. It basically teaches you how to build an AI chatbot for high ticket coaches. I'm sure you love it. It will teach you a lot, and by building more of these projects, you'll be able to build and sell more stuff to businesses. I'll see you in the next one. Go win.